Mike and Tom are registered with Stewart Partners Global Advisory LLC.
Common Sense Finance with Mike Wiginton and Tom Farrell of HL Wiginton Capital Management, an independent investment and financial planning firm in downtown Jasper. Mike is a chartered financial analyst charter holder, and Tom is a certified financial planner professional. They are here to discuss and give their thoughts on current financial and economic matters. Now, with Common Sense Finance, here are Mike and Tom.
Welcome back. Thanks for joining us again. Mike, it's hot outside today. It's unseasonably warm. It makes me think about climate change. We
think
talk
about climate change a lot.
I do. I mean, it's on the news. You can't pull up any website, financial or otherwise, without seeing something about it. So it makes me think about it. It is warm today, but that's not what we want to talk. We're not going to debate the science or any of that stuff. But what we do want to talk about, I know you have an interest in, is how may that affect the economy? All the climate change activists and things that are going on with that, and how might it affect your investments, or even down to the individual stocks that you may own?
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you this, and you and I are kind of debating this back and forth, but over the next 2, maybe 3 of these episodes, I'm going to talk about things that may be considered a little bit more controversial or a little bit more edgy, which is good for me, but they may not be, probably won't be, so much geared toward a financial tactic or a financial strategy or a financial vehicle of any sorts, but more of a general economic theme, if you will. And so,
but it could have an effect on how you
invest your money,
your business, and things like that.
Absolutely, and I think it will. And I think these are things. I want to make this point clear. I think that these these issues are important. I also believe they're issues. I'm going to present them in a way because I think they're parts or facets of the issues that you may not be familiar with. You're probably not reading the same journals that we're reading, seeing the same material presented, or maybe not thinking about it in the same way. So I want to present it to you. You can be obviously you are the decision maker. You make up your own minds, which is a point that I'm very passionate about. But I want to start with this. Today, climate change falls into this category that's referred to as environmental, social, and governance. ESG, for environmental, social, and governance, is the acronym. And you see that pushed around a lot. It's very much in vogue today. You look at all your big big asset managers on the globe, and they're talking about ESG. All right, you see that everywhere.
Sorry to interrupt you,
good.
But it was a handful of years ago I started seeing that term, and I saw it here and there. And it's now, every time you pick up a publication or click on a financial website, you're going to see something about that type of investing or these type of activists. So it's very almost mainstream now.
But we've always dealt with that, and that's the first point I want to make. Forever, if you've been in this business, you've had clients that had, we call them restrictions on their investments. They would say, I don't want to invest in any companies that make alcohol.
Drinking alcohol.
My cousin Billy was an alcoholic and he beat his wife, so I don't believe in that. Or I don't want to buy any tobacco stocks, or I don't want to own any companies that are involved in producing missiles or rockets, defense companies. And I don't want to be clear about this also. It's to go without saying, that's obviously their right to do that. And it's their money, it's their assets, and you have a duty to invest those monies in accordance with their restrictions and their wishes. Okay, that's not a problem. But today's ESG this movement is different, because one of the subtleties of the old days that may be lost was this. Their point was, I don't believe in it or I don't agree with it, so don't invest my dollars there.
Right.
Today's movement, which is really the big push in today's group, has to do with climate change. And their position, you read it for yourself, but this is my take on it, and it seems very clear to me, all right? But I'll leave it to you to decide. Their position is, I don't agree with it, and I'm going to change it, or I'm going to eliminate it, and I'm talking about the companies, all right, or the businesses or the industries. I'm going to eliminate it, so you're not going to be able to invest in it either, okay? So I will bring up for you in this, because there's lots of different groups. You refer to them as activists, and that's fine. I mean, they're all kind of activists. That's not necessarily a bad word. I don't mean it to be that way. And I don't mean for this to be either about pro or you may be on the either side or the other on climate change, and I don't mean to really address that either. But I'm going to use one particular organization, Climate Action 100 Plus. Climate Action 100 Plus. You go to their website. It's climateaction100.org, and you can read this for yourself. And it's just one of many organizations out there, but they're very much in the news right now because BlackRock, one of the largest asset managers on the globe, just recently joined in with their initiative. Okay.
So these are not just a handful of people that are getting together trying to protest these companies. These are actual people that have influence. Some of them are large money managers, so they're getting involved that's at the top level of
right.
Finance.
That's 100% right. And I want to use this Climate Action 100 organization as just a point of reference to talk about what the problem is as I see it, and then to move into who it's going to affect and why. And so if you look at their website, they refer to themselves as quote, a 5-year initiative to ensure that the world's largest emitters of greenhouse gases, that they take critical action to align with the goals of the Paris Agreement. All right? So that they want to enforce compliance with the Paris Agreement. And then if you look at their 2019 progress report, it states that climate change requires, not suggests, but requires that the companies that they target, because there's a list of their target companies that now includes 161. It's gone from 100 to 161. But these companies that they target, that they have to undertake demanding shifts in strategy, capital allocation, and technological deployment. So what they're saying is, we're going to require you to, and we're going to force you, if they're successful, because this is their mission, that we're going to dictate to you your capital allocation and your strategy and how you spend money on technology, okay? Which in today's world is a huge part of the expense section of the income statement, okay? So I want to be clear about who these folks are and what their goal is, all right? Now, who is this going to affect? Well, obviously, it can affect shareholders in these companies, all right? So back to how we were saying, compare environmental social governance movement from yesterday to today.
Right.
Right. So if you are an investor in one of these companies today, it's hard. I can't look at this and come away without thinking, if these folks are successful, your returns in these companies aren't going to be what they used to be. Because if they're successful, and I can't say that enough, if they are successful, it's going to affect revenues and profits, and therefore your returns on the stock. As a matter of fact, I don't think it's a stretch at all to say some of these target companies may not exist going forward. And as a matter of fact, entire industries may not exist. Okay? So it's going to affect shareholders. Well, back to that list that now is 161 companies. Take a look at that list. It is substantial, all right? It covers most of the S&P 500, all right? When I look at this, it's hard for me to say, hey, I'm not so sure that if you're just an investor in a passive index fund that tracks the S&P 500, it's going to affect going to affect overall market returns, not just a return on one company, but returns of the market as benchmarked or as represented by the Standard & Poor's 500 index, but it's going to affect returns across the whole market. So this is going to have an impact in anybody who is now or ever will be an investor, in my opinion, if their efforts are fruitful. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. Yeah.
All right.
Well, I mean, if you're taking assets away from generating revenue, and you're having to put them into these new technologies that that they think are not going to pollute as much, or they're going to, then your bottom line is going to be affected, and that's going to affect your stock price.
Exactly.
As well as there's talk about that. I mean, the economy as a whole. You're talking about probably laying folks off. Talking about jobless rate going up. I mean,
that's right.
There's a trickle down effect from all this.
Well, so I want to move on to be clear about what my position is. All right. I have never met another human being in my life, they may be out there, but I've never met them, that said, I want to drink some toxic water. I think that'd be good. I want to breathe polluted air, or I want to live in a world where, half of the country's erupting in heat waves, and we got sea levels rising, and we got mass destruction of property and populations dying off because of that. Never met anybody that says that's a good thing. Okay, and I'm not to just be silly about it, but just to make the point, because you can, they want to make the. It seems to me that the position kind of isolates people into, well, if you're not with us, then you're for the destruction of the earth, and that's not fair at all. Okay, but here's the thing: as I have studied it, and I have investigated it, climate change is a very complicated issue. And it's an issue where if you're bringing hard facts to the table, that the jury's still out. Look, I'm not saying, absolutely I understand and I acknowledge that things like temperatures, average temperatures and sea level changes are observable. They're measurable. I get that. The question becomes, what is causing them? We had an ice age at one time, so we were led to believe. And things warmed up, and this is before, people were around, all right? I don't think anybody disputes the fact that the earth is a living, breathing organism that changes over time, okay? But when you look at the goals of folks like Climate Action 100, they seem far-fetched or impractical. Here's some of their goals. They want boards of these companies to be accountable and to have oversight for climate change. I don't know how you do that. Have accountability for climate change. Accountability goes to, if you're understanding corporate boards now, goes to having some liability. Yeah. Some legal liability. Here, how about this one? What do you think about this? Limiting global average temperature increases to, and this is quote, to well below 2 degrees Celsius. So we're going to put you in charge of limiting global temperatures to below 2 degrees. That's getting specific. All right. Forcing disclosures from different climate committees that may have so disclosures on your balance sheets or your income statements, your financial statements, all right, disclosures that are concocted by groups, committees that may very well have no business experience whatsoever. I think those goals are just impossible to achieve.
That's goofy.
I mean, you have to acknowledge that and explain it, okay? It's strikingly similar to me. A couple of other, I call them manias, and if I were going to put a title to this podcast, it would be manias, hysterias, climate change, and your investments too. Okay, but in the late 60s and 70s, you had peak oil theory. Said we discovered all the oil, and you had peak population
run out of oil.
They said you're going to have mass starvation by the early 80s because we won't be able to feed the growing worlds up. Both of those were proved to be silly because they couldn't understand how technology was going to change all that.
Right.
So they just extrapolated a particular incident well into the future, and that's plagued with problems. Right. That sort of thinking process. So I would just conclude this whole thing by a little bit of a repeat of what I said. What doesn't matter what side of the climate change debate you're on, whether you're an investor now or you ever will be, you need to understand and pay attention to how this debate is being structured in the marketplace. It may be going on in ways that you're not familiar with, and it's going to be important to you. I think it's going to affect everybody's returns, whether it's return in your pension plan that you're going to count on in retirement or in your 401k plan or your just general investments. So I think before you start shutting down the industrial engines of the world, you better have a pretty firm grip on the facts and what you can do with a high degree of probability to change those things. Right. So with that said, I'll let you offer the last word.
Well, I mean, again, I think you said this earlier. This is probably not stuff that you read about in this light every day, but we see these kind of things all the time when we're doing our research and things like that. So I think it's good to make everybody aware of what's going on out there and how it may affect them in the future. So with that said, thank you and have a good day.